Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everybody on X and on YouTube. Firstly, yes, I know I lost an earring. I frequently do, so I just put two different earrings on. It disappeared in the sofa somewhere, but luckily they only cost €1.50 from the local Chinese cash and carry store. We get everything there. Right, this video today is about Byline Times and also a little bit towards the end about Meghan. So I am an advocate for free speech and a free press. I've been following the royal family for since I was about 7 years old, or been aware of them, really started taking an interest round about the Diana years. And there is a follower on X, Sosie, I think, who has been very anxious for me to cover this story in Byline Times. So that's what I'm going to do. Now, Sosie, I don't consider a sugar. Don't know if it's a man or a woman. Because firstly, they're not that rude. They're not that fanatical. They've never issued a death threat. They've never issued any violence. They don't make personal attacks. They are passionate. They have certain beliefs. They support Meghan and Harry to the death. But that doesn't necessarily make them a sugar or not even squaddy, because some of the squaddies like Duchess of Success, who has a YouTube channel, you know, I've never heard her make any personal attacks, death threats, anything like that. She comes across as a really polite young lady. So there are Meghan supporters and then there are lunatics, which I think we've all come across, haven't we? And they do no good at all for Meghan, actually. So this whole video is really about the press, the royal family, the relationship, and Byline Times. Now, I'd never been on the website, read this before. I was aware. I'd heard it and seen it. And I suppose stories they'd printed didn't catch my eye or I wasn't interested. So this particular one is about Dan Wootton and a royal aide and the royal households and Harry and Meghan, and they have done bullet points. Now, Byline Times is subscription funded, and also Sarah Data and the other sugars have crowdfunded. They have raised money, I've seen on Twitter. Even though Sarah Data has blocked me, there's another app that I can use. I can see what she's saying. So it's kind of futile blocking people. It is silly anyway, because just because you don't like what somebody says, if you block them, that's you're just putting yourself in an echo chamber, really, aren't you? And that's one of the reasons I don't block sugars. I don't even block the violent or death-threatening ones. I let everybody speak because I believe everyone has the right to their opinion. Everyone has the right to be heard, even if you disagree, and especially if you disagree with them. Because once you go down this road of, we'll just block them, pretend they don't exist. It's one of these, isn't it? La 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 la. Doesn't mean they don't exist. It's the same sort of thing that when sugars come along and make allegations, saying shit doesn't make shit fact. Do you know what I mean? Now, Byline Times, as I say, they're subscription, basically, that's the theory. And in order for me to read this whole article, I would have to pay and subscribe, and I'm not going to do that. And there's a very good reason for that. And I'd advise other people don't do it. Because they have made their position clear, that they're not impartial, and because they are taking funding from Sarah Data, they're going to follow the money of the squaddies. And I personally don't want my personal bank details given to them, because I remember when Wally got ripped off and £38,000 or something was stolen out of her PayPal account. She was conned. And I suspect, I have no evidence, but I suspect there may have been some skullduggery going on, because I know that some sugars, for example, phone people's employers, put up poison posters in places like Bucklebury. They will look at a person that they don't agree with, that doesn't adore and worship Meghan and Harry, and they will think, are they a churchgoer? Right, let's start emailing poison emails to the vicar and the parishioners. Do they drink in a particular pub? Let's start emailing, or at the pub and all the clubs they're involved in. Where do they work? Let's get them fired. You know, I mean, anybody who does that, whether on our team or their team, I think that's utterly fucking despicable behaviour. Personally, I have never in my life emailed anybody to get them a pariah of their community. I have never gone out of my way to have somebody fired, destroy their reputation, destroy their career. Never. On this channel, if you go back through my videos, you'll see one of my reasons for being interested in narcissism is that my family have had a couple of very nasty psychopaths. Nothing to do with Meghan and Harry. We've had these psychopaths in our lives, and I wouldn't even name them or identify them because they have rights. Never mind defamation or lawsuits, I wouldn't do it because it is a very bad, low snake thing to do, especially if you think you're doing it and nobody can see. I've often said, if you don't want to be thought a twat, don't do twatty things when you think no one's looking, because there may come a day when everybody sees what you did and they're going to think you're a twat. So to be on the safe side, just don't behave like a twat. Don't email people's employers. I know it for a fact because we're really best friends with the people we work with, and we sit and laugh with them at some of the things that are sent by the sugars, or the phone calls in the middle of the night, death threats and shit like that. So we're very lucky that we work with them. But I mean, other people, so there's absolutely no bloody way I would give my bank details to Byline Times in order to read the article. I do understand that they need funding, okay? So I don't believe they're doing it as a trap. But my problem is I don't trust them because of their affiliation with Sarah Data and the Sugars. That's just my standpoint. So unfortunately, all I can go from are the bullet points that they've put out. So I put that at the beginning because not having had the advantage of reading the full article, perhaps some things that I say will be inaccurate, or so say will say, well, you should have bought the article. I'm not going to buy the article. They are selling it in hard copy, I believe, in London and other parts of the UK, because the theory is that if they're trying to persuade people to go back to hard copy journalism, what they call real journalism, which is a horribly naive idea. Horribly naive. There's a very good reason it all went online. It's just, it's expensive hard copy and it's slow. And, you know, there was a very, very well-known newspaper years ago, back in 2000. Yeah, I think it was in the year 2000. When I was in the newspapers, Graham and I created a website which a friend of ours very inadvisedly said, I'd done it all, you know, to get my side across, and she said, oh no, let's big it up, let's make it like 10 times more exciting than it is. And I said, I don't know about that. And against my better judgment, I allowed her to do it, which was a terrible idea, and never lived it down ever since. But we made the newspapers aware, and we were teased by the Daily Mail. They said, in a really sarcastic way, oh, Fiona and Graham have created something called a website on something called the internet. I'm sure it's just a passing phase, said the old dinosaurs that used to run the Daily Mail. Well, I'm sorry, but going back to hard copy, forget it. I mean, it's dinosaur territory. I understand where Sarah Data and the Sugars are coming from. And I suppose now Harry's thinking, well, Rupert Murdoch bought up little news outlets to pump whatever policy he wanted. So Harry's going to buy up little failing news outlets so he can pump. My advice would be, why don't you just buck up your fucking behaviour? That would be quick and cheap. Just stop acting up. And I'll come to that at the end. I am armed with Graham's phone to read out the accurate bullet points from Byline Times, and I have made notes for myself to respond to those bullet points, and I'm also armed with a copy of the fabulous Paul Burrell's book, A Royal Duty, all about Princess Diana, because actually it's mostly about Paul and his life in service with the Queen, the royal family, and ultimately Princess Diana. And there are a couple of little bits in there because I think Paul's book has been used mostly as a basis for the Netflix crown, loosely speaking. He's been a signpost, pointing him in the right directions, because it is a very complex institution. Not only the monarchy, but the crown, Parliament. I mean, if anybody watched the live Graham and I did the other day, where we basically, like a couple of Philistines, destroyed royal history, and we were scratching our heads and couldn't remember which king came after which king and how it all happened, and Bonfire Night and James the First and oh God. So I mean, it's a very, very complicated subject. So let's get on with Byline Times. I need my glasses, which I've put up. So the nub of the article is that there is this theory that there's the royal household, the principal members of the royal family, the government, the media, newspapers, largely Rupert Murdoch, were all in it together to bring Harry and Meghan down. Okay, and the first bullet point is, Prince Harry and Meghan were forced out of the Sandringham Agreement and continue in public service from Canada when his father pulled the plug on funding. Right, so I also saw in another, I think I saw in another page on Byline Times that they said the King pulled their funding. Well, he wasn't the King at the time. He was the Prince of Wales. Secondly, it is not his decision to give or pull public funding. Harry is suing the Home Office for his public funded security. He is not suing the royal family. He's suing the Home Office. That is taxpayer funded. Now, as I pointed out, and this is going to be a very unpopular point, I know, because a lot of the people who regularly watch me did vote leave in the Brexit referendum. Before the referendum vote, I knew they were going to vote leave. I knew it instinctively. I did everything I could on Facebook to point out that if they voted to leave the European Union, they would lose benefits of the membership club. And lo and behold, they voted leave, and then the EU explained, you're going to lose certain benefits of the membership club. When you leave a job, you hand back the keys to the company car, you hand back the keys to the executive toilet if you're lucky enough to have one, you lose your wage because you don't work there anymore, you hand back the keys to the office because you don't work there anymore. Harry and Meghan left the royal family. They made it clear they weren't even going to be living in the UK on a permanent basis. The UK taxpayer cannot be expected to pay for their security, royal protection, while they flit about doing deals. And there were Netflix and interviews in the pipeline before they left the royal family. There is evidence of that. Bullet point number 2. It followed the news that a partner of a key aide to Prince William received £4,000 from the Sun, allegedly for stories about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex when Wootton was executive editor. Now, this bullet point is... oh, the irony. The gentleman's name is Christian Jones. Now, I remember Christian Jones. I remember seeing photographs of him. It was January 2019 that he was Meghan's personal assistant or the person in the palace helping her. Now, I only really found out about Christian and his connection to Dan Wootton through Yankee Wally. And if Sarah Data and the other sugars hadn't been so keen to take Wally's channel down, they could today be watching archived 5-year-old videos of Wally explaining to all of us that Christian Jones, in her belief, may have been tipping people off. Oh, the irony. Whereas the Sugars and Byline Times have been paying for a mere 3-year investigation, when Wally already uncovered this 5 years ago, for God's sake. Isn't there irony in that? And the truth of the matter is, so say Sarah Data, Sugars, whoever you support, staff talk. They talk. Now, Diana, everybody says, oh, she was a commoner. Fuck off. She was Lady Diana Spencer. She grew up, well, I think she did grow up in Althorpe, largely speaking, when the family moved there. She grew up knowing damn well, if you shit all over the staff, they're going to gossip, they're going to tell people, word's going to get out. And that's why Lady Diana Spencer, who became Princess Diana, made it her business to go down to the kitchen and have a chocolate biscuit and a cup of coffee with the staff, ask them how they're doing, how's your family, are you okay, are you happy? And that's why, largely speaking, a lot of shit didn't get out about Princess Diana, because she had a steel ring of loyalty. If you treat them like shit, they're going to run along to the newspapers. And even if they're loyal and they don't, they're going to go home to their mummies and daddies and friends, and they're going to burst into tears and say, that member of the royal family was really bloody rude to me and really bloody horrible, and I nearly burst into tears in front of everybody, and I fucking hate them. I think you'll find that's the crux of the matter. Which brings me to Paul Burrell's book, because this I found just incredible. Firstly, I see a lot of these people who are in favour of down with the monarchy and all that. They go on about solid gold pianos when we all know it's made of fucking wood and it's got a bit of gold leaf over the top. They go on about how they lord it over us peasants, blah, blah, blah. And they talk about Buck House and having 183 bedrooms, blah, blah, blah. Oh, 183 bedrooms. How many bedrooms does a family of about 20 people need? Well, I'll tell you why they need 183 bedrooms. I'll give you Paul's description, Paul Burrell, at his time living in Buck House. It's just a little couple of sentences right now. Where's it gone? Here we are. It's in the chapter The Queen and I on page 74. If the princess was pinching herself over the magnificently surreal world in which she found herself, then so was a certain footman. He's talking about himself. Often I sat in the seat beneath the low oblong window of my bedroom, looking over the London from Buckingham Palace, thinking back to the cobbled streets of Chapel Road, wondering what would have happened if I'd kept my life at Wessex Hotel. I felt incredibly fortunate, working in the shadow of the Queen, and from that top window, the view enhanced the disbelief. Looking out across the Victoria Monument, down the width of the Mall, funneling into Admiralty Arch, the expanse of St James's Park, littered with blue and white deck chairs in the summer, Big Ben towering on the horizon. So, when you stand outside Buckingham Palace, as Graham and I did a couple of weeks ago, and you look up at all the little windows, it's not the Queen's bedroom, it's not the King's bedroom. They're staff, they're people who work there. And Paul goes extensively into the accommodation, which in those days, you know, I think no central heating, no air conditioning, I mean, really pretty bloody awful, which is hence the renovations, right? It's not to spend yet more money on a multi-millionaire family, the Windsors. It's to make sure that the people that they work with, and they are a team, are comfortable and have human living standards. So Paul could see the Queen Victoria Monument and all the way down the Mall, a member of staff. A member of staff who was treated exceptionally well by the family. He got on very well with them. He got on very well with the Queen. He absolutely adored her. He adored Princess Diana. He was extremely fond of Prince Charles. And he explains all about it. I mean, when people say Paul was a traitor for writing this book, I just think, fuck off. Because he's actually talking about what it's like to work in service for the royal family. He doesn't slag them off at any point. In fact, if anything, he is so nice to them. So there you go, people who want a republic. Buckingham Palace is crown property. It belongs to the people, the citizens, and it's something that a lot of us are very proud of. Unfortunately, some citizens like to look down their nose at it, and if you ask me, they're some of the biggest snobs in town. Right, let's get to the other part of Paul's book, because I think this might explain a lot. If only Prince Harry could see my videos and understand this, it might clear up quite a lot for him. Because as I said, if you shit all over the servants, ultimately they're going to say stuff, aren't they? Now this is a problem, and I'm guessing that this problem or this rule was probably brought about round about the Queen Mother and before. Like, we're going back to Queen Mary, before that, Queen Alexandra, etc., etc. And if I had worked in any of the royal households, I would have said to all of the staff and principals, this is a terrible idea and a recipe for leaks. So he's talking about what it's like to be a good servant. And bear in mind, Paul worked for them, God, got to be going back 30 years or so. The art of being a good servant, I learned, was to perform as many of my duties without being seen. A servant's life was spent in the shadows, and at best, he or she should be invisible. At its most extreme, this requirement led a scurrying army of maids or footmen to hide until the coast was clear. At Sandringham House, maids would dart into walk-in cupboard under the stairs so as not to be seen when the Queen was coming down the main hall. This was hide without seek, led to many bizarre situations as staff lurked behind closed doors of a back passageway leading to a bedroom, ear pressed to the door to listen for a quiet signal that it was safe to proceed. From a shadowy recess, staff watched a drawing room until the last guest had left, then cleared empty glasses, stoked the fire, plumped the cushions and brushed the carpet. And I dare say a lot of those servants, while they were dutifully hiding under cupboard stairs and trying to be invisible, probably overheard things they shouldn't have done. And, I repeat, if a particular principal had been seriously rude to them, probably sold the story to the papers. Who needs MI6 and MI5 when you got some rude idiot in the royal family bolshing it about and being super rude to what they consider serfs and servants? They're not, they're staff, they're team members, they're human beings, which Princess Diana and Her Late Majesty, and I dare say all of the rest of the royal family, not sure about one or two, perhaps Andrew, could be bloody rude, I've heard a thing or two. Perhaps Meghan and Harry could be bloody rude, I've heard a thing or two. And perhaps those stories tend to get out. That explains a lot more to me than the theory that Rupert Murdoch maybe has listening devices or is in cahoots with the Lord Chamberlain, Lord Peel at the time, or that it's the private secretary to the Monarch who's got a few other things on their mind than what bloody Harry and Meghan want. Right, let's get to the next bullet point. So Christian Jones, I would say go watch Wally's videos on them, but oh yes, that's right, we can't because her speech was silenced. Apparently bullet point 3, which I will read out in all fairness to the Byline Times, horse's mouth and all that. The payments came to light in anonymous whistleblower emails claiming to be from admin workers within the Murdoch newspaper publishing empire. Now, I'm not sticking up for Rupert Murdoch. He's always been a bit of a bastard. Everybody knows that. If sugars are only just waking up to the fact there's a guy called Rupert Murdoch who's a bit of a bastard and he's right-wing, well, I'll give you a round of applause. You finally worked that out. By the way, have you sugars ever heard of the Barclay twins? Oh, I'll let you discover that one for yourself. Ever heard of Paul Dacre? He's not very nice sometimes, although he was fair to me and Graham, I suppose, in a manner of speaking. So that one is an anonymous whistleblower. Well, then you've got to take it with a pinch of salt, like I do in my videos. When an insider or an anonymous source says something about Meghan, I always say, well, let's take that one with a pinch of salt. Bullet point number 4. They told how payments had provoked panic at the Sun and claimed senior executives quietly brushed the matter under the carpet. I seriously doubt that. The stuff that the newspapers, they roll around in all kinds of muck all the time. And I have met these kind of characters. I don't think you'll find any sense of panic there. Good grief. But it's also, that's unconfirmed, and I suppose I'd have to pay for the article to see the details. The Metropolitan Police looked into the alleged leaking, but could not go to a judge for a warrant to search royal staff property without knowing the identity of the whistleblowers. I guess so. And I think the whistleblowers might have been maybe dressmakers, cleaners. Right. Two internal royal investigations followed, one involving Simon Case, who is today the embattled head of the civil service facing questions over the government response to the pandemic. I don't really see what that's got to do with anything. I don't know who Simon Case is, and there are many people who work in the civil service, and again, I suppose I'd have to pay for the article. I'd never heard of these palace investigations before. Maybe they did happen or not. It's not something that hit my radar. The palace investigations cleared the aide after he denied being the source of Archie and Meg's information and told Mr. Case, that neither he nor his partner were friends with Dan Wootton, although he admitted to knowing the journalist. Now, again, I refer to Wally's videos. Now, I can't remember. Christian Jones, I think, was the husband of an aide who worked at Buckingham Palace, or he was the husband of somebody who worked in a newspaper. I can't remember which way round. But I do, I mean, if only Wally's videos were there, she had it all nailed down. Byline Times has uncovered new photographic evidence of Wootton, the aide, and the aide's partner at a lavish birthday party Wootton threw for his close friends in a £1,675 a night hotel suite. Well, again, I don't have the advantage of seeing the photograph because I'd have to give my personal bank details to what I consider an enemy camp who may try stealing money from my bank or use it for fraudulent purposes. I just don't trust Byline Times, so I'm sorry. I can live without seeing the photograph. If they want to make it so it's like behind a paywall, then they've got to accept the fact that they're not going to get the exposure. If they're going to print it in hard copy like a school news sheet and put it in a few newsagents around London, then they've got to accept that the message isn't going to get out there. There comes a point when you've got to release information which is freely accessible if you want people to see it. But I don't doubt there is such a photograph exists because they say so, and I'm sure they have a legal department. And even if it does, so what? There are lots of photographs. There are photographs of Oprah Winfrey with Jeffrey Epstein, aren't there? And Harvey Weinstein. And that's what happens. You get celebrities at functions. That does not make Oprah Winfrey guilty or complicit in anything anyone else has done. It shows they all associate with each other. So I'm sorry, I don't really see the relevance in that, but I don't doubt the photograph exists. Prince Harry sent formal letters before action detailing the claims about Wootton and the palace to, it just says News UK. Now, I think they mean News UK Corporation Limited. Right, so he sent a letter before action. Sir Clive Alderton, again, a name I'm not familiar with, today King Charles and Queen Camilla's right-hand man, and the former Lord Chamberlain, Lord Peel, put pressure on Harry to alter the legal papers. When the aide's name, that would be Christian Jones, I suppose. It was Christian Jones. I suppose that's who they're talking about. When the aide's name was not removed from the legal letters, the letters before action from Harry, the Sussexes were cut adrift financially and left unable to protect themselves despite having a security threat equal to the monarch. If they've got a security threat equal to the monarch, then so do I. They are not that close to the throne. And I think that's the crux of the matter, isn't it? She really sees herself as important as our late Elizabeth II. She sees herself as important as the monarch. Get Ben, nonsense, what a load of tosh. Good gracious, even Harry himself is not that important. Even Peter Morgan, who's just about to release season 6 of The Crown, said he's only focusing on the important direct heirs to the throne, and Harry is not one of them. I mean, good gracious. The royal household had thought the threat of exposure would force Harry and Meghan to return to the UK, where their profile could be controlled, preventing them from eclipsing the future king. Well, I don't know where they've got that from. Apparently there are emails from somebody to somebody. Whether they're anonymous or named, I do not know. But the story I heard at the time was that when Harry and Meghan left, there was a collective sigh of relief amongst the staff. Final bullet point. But it drove a wedge through the royal family and set in train events leading to Prince Harry's book Spare, a string of high-profile commercial media deals, and ongoing bad blood in the British monarchy. Well, I disagree with that, which is my right. However, I also respect the right of the Sugars to have free speech, which they did deny Wally. And also there are people on our side who would like to silence people. And I disagree with both. Because when you start, let's say they've got this online safety bill thing, which Charles has been criticised for signing. He has no choice. He has to sign every act of parliament that has been through both houses. This has happened before with monarchs. They're not allowed to interfere. As soon as a monarch says, I don't like that act of parliament, I refuse to sign that, what they're basically saying is they are going against two democratically elected houses, the lower and the higher. And then we're going back to the days of, and I've got to remember the king now, which was the king again, Graham, the whole thing was James II. James II, when they got rid of him and his dodgy baby in the bedpan. They went, that's it, we are never going to be told what to do by a monarch again. Ever. The monarch rules with the permission of Parliament. In the United Kingdom, Parliament is the democratically elected one. So unfortunately, and I don't like the online safety bill, and I don't like the direction things are going in, but the monarch is powerless to refuse to sign that bill, to refuse to sign any act of parliament. And that's the truth of it. I do understand the concern and anger of Americans, and that unfortunately a prince of our British realm is on your land interfering and trying to tell you what to do, and worse, threatening your First Amendment. That is abhorrent. He should not be doing that. But unfortunately, you'll have to forgive us and our royal family. He's a bit thick, and it takes him time to work things out. I've come across, not that I'm saying Harry's a moron, but we've come across morons in our lives before, and I used to laugh at stupid people who don't think things through and think, who cares? But unfortunately, if you put them in positions of power or influence, any kind of power or influence, let alone have money, they can be bloody dangerous, as we discovered to our cost with a negligent marina manager years ago who was an utter moron, nearly killed our entire family, nearly destroyed our boat, allowed squatters to move in. I mean, that was all down to the fact that the guy was a moron. Thank God he's not there anymore. But it cost us dearly. And unfortunately for the United States, at the moment you've got a prince of the realm there, yapping his head off, and he doesn't understand a bloody clue about what's going on any more than a lot of these sugars understand how the British monarchy, our constitutional monarchy, and our democratic system works. It is 1,000-year-old tradition, and they just don't get it. But I agree with their right to say it all. Let them say it all. I can see Lord Peel and the other guy, Simon Case, saying to Harry, you can't just go flinging allegations against Christian in a letter before action. Bloody hell. What if he hasn't been talking to Rupert Murdoch's papers? Your letter before action is going to make them look at Christian, and they're going to start thinking God knows what. So I can see that, and I can see hothead moron Harry not really understanding how things work. So there you go, Sose. I have read it. Well, I've read the bullet points. I'm not going to give my money to someone who works with Sarah Data. No fucking way. Right, now, all that's done. I see last night that Page 6 reported, and yes, I will put the disclaimer in, apparently Page 6 is part of the Murdoch. I think it's a New York Post. It's a gossip branch of that. But I did say quite a few months ago that I found that a lot of what Page 6 was saying, they seemed to be hot on the money in the first. And they said last night that they had approached Audible to find out, is it true that they're in negotiations with Meghan Markle so she can have a new Architect podcast on Audible because she was sacked by Spotify. And apparently Audible said there is absolutely no truth in it. We are not in negotiations with her, which is interesting because I'd seen about 17 puff pieces, which is a regular thing PR seems to do. They throw out a rumour, hoping that the person who is the subject of the rumour will go, oh, that's a good idea, like Dior. Oh, that's a good idea. We could have Meghan Markle as the face of Dior. Now, when it comes to the point where organisations such as Dior and Audible are having to put out press statements saying there is no truth in it, that's because they're trying to distance themselves because they find it toxic and damaging and they don't want to be associated. I mean, this is a new thing. Before, companies would just keep it zipped. But I suppose Dior was seeing things cancelled and Audible, people were cancelling their subscriptions. They felt the need to go, whoa, 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 we're not negotiating with her. I don't know. As I often say, I could be full of shit and I'm only giving my opinion, as the people in the comments section will give their opinion. But I mean, that really is something when people now have to say openly, I'm not having anything to do with Meghan Markle, please don't cancel me. That's how bad the situation has got. And perhaps it is a possibility to consider, Sugars, Sarah Data. Perhaps Meghan was a little bit of a rude bitch to one or two members of staff. And perhaps those members of staff that were cleaning corridors hid. And they heard Madam come down the corridor and say, la 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 la. Or maybe they heard other principals come out of a room thinking nobody was listening, dropped their guard in a moment of relaxation and said, oh God, is Meghan really going to be there? No, she's not going. Oh God, what a sigh of relief. Isn't she a drama queen? What the hell? Bear that in mind, Sugars. Anyway, as always, thank you all very much for listening to this extremely long video. It's 37 minutes and 5 seconds. Look forward to seeing you in the comments section below.